I'd like to quickly make introductions to everybody. So we have with us Omar Chakil, Mohammed Kahal, Noha Mohsen, Youssef Sharafy, Giulia Tubelli, Rochelle, and Athan. Thank you for being here today. I think I'm going to ask you some of the questions that we have prepared for you today. And I think it would be nice for us to maybe have it like as more of a conversational panel rather than, you know, answering each question exactly. First of all, I think what we wanted to ask was, seeing as the exhibition was in the Egyptian Museum, and this museum was built in 1902, and I think it was one of the first museums to be built as a museum to house antiquities. So I think a lot of the work that was displayed bridged the past and the present, and also some of the concepts that were derived, like the lighting concept that you created, Noha, were like amplifying that experience. So firstly, I'll go this way. So how do you guys balance honoring local traditions and with global ideas? That like the global ideas are ever changing and we're reaching into an age of like AI and technology, but also we still want to stay attuned with the craftsmanship, the traditions that we uphold and want to keep. So, Omar.
Should I hold the mic?
Yeah. Right.
So I think for me, I don't think that I consciously try to find that balance. I think that I try to honor the material that I work with and try to answer to personal needs, and the balance hopefully happens automatically. I don't think that it's not something that I start off by thinking, okay, what am I going to do to try to find that type of balance? You know what I mean? Hopefully it happens organically. Yeah.
So I think for me, we honor our tradition or our heritage by using global ideas, especially in the rug industry, for example. We manufacture our rugs and carpets in the same exact way our ancestors did, over 150 years doing the same exact thing. And I think when we work with global artists or global campaigns or anything that sheds light on that craft, it sparks a dialogue and it allows people to it allows people to start talking about the craft itself and start talking about what it means to honor tradition and, you know, really shed a light on the craft itself. That's, for me, something that's very important. Yeah.
So for me, it boils down to what's innate. I think we're shaped by history, we're shaped by our experiences and what we've seen. And for lighting concepts, we honor the space, we honor its architecture, we try to be authentic to what was happening during that period. We complement daylight instead of competing with it, or we replicate it at night. So we're constantly honoring the history and the tradition of how things have been done. But I also think technology builds on that and doesn't compete with it. So it just allows us more possibilities.
I think maybe in the way yesterday, for example, like you turned off the lights of the museum to maybe curate how the viewer was going to experience the space.
Well, we created a concept where we wanted to, you need to guide the eye, yes, and you need to really choose what to highlight and what not. So for yesterday's concept, we first started by creating a spatial impact. So we lit the dome, the arches, and the columns. And then we lit the statues themselves to bring the Ka back to life. And it was an honor to try to play with light and shadow and bring these grand forms back to an emotional feeling. So so yes, we were authentic to the history, I hope, of that grand space.
Same question?
Yes, yes.
Well, first I would like to talk about the experience and being part of this mind-blowing experience. It's the first time that Formed by Dialogue, starting from the name itself, which really hooked me, the dialogue, the word dialogue. Because it is a dialogue when we talk about the balance between heritage and modernity. It is a dialogue, basically. And we don't see heritage and global ideas and modernity as opposites at all. It is basically heritage grounds us, and global ideas pushes us to, and global influence basically to remain curious and relevant. So that's how we see it.
And I think like the past informs the present, so we take from that. Yes, Giulia.
Hi. I do agree with what you just said. For me, the question you asked, my answer would be identity. So for me, there is no really difference between past, present, and future, as long as you, instead of looking just outside, you go also inside, and by looking inside, so also you're looking at what you can't look with your eyes, you discover many things. And in my case, my relationship as an Italian who works in Egypt, this leads to an interpretation which is personal. At the end, it's just personal, and you take bits from every aspect. And for me, this heritage that I am very interested in looking at is the Mediterranean heritage, because this is our identity at the end. So we share this, and of course, to be in the Egyptian Museum, it means a lot of things, a lot, maybe too many, that it's hard to interpret. But by magical, for example, I was amazed by the fact that we didn't plan where the chair was supposed to be, but it was just next to the Sphinx, and they had the same attitude. So they had the two legs, and the chair was like this with the back, and we were like, should we turn it? No, that's like talking to the Sphinx. It's perfect. So when you put yourself in touch with the environment, you have the answer back without too much effort. So that's my experience, but it's mostly maybe interpretation at the end.
Yes, and I think like Youssef was saying, your piece was in dialogue with the Sphinx in that moment. Yes. Rochelle.
I think for me, there's definitely a conscious decision when I'm coming into a new place or new environment as an outsider or foreigner to first listen to the land and to first listen to the artisans and the people and the local traditions that are here. I always come with I would say my ideas are not global in terms of material, but global in terms of thought. So if I'm talking about rebirth or the feminine, how do I integrate that into a local context? And so working with the artisans here really helped me to understand how to use materials, how to use specific codes or hieroglyphs that would be able to translate my idea, but I was very conscious in a way not to overstep, but to kind of merge and be in dialogue with the traditions here.
Awesome. Thank you. Athan?
I mean, I think everybody said it. Like, this was really a dialogue. All of us approached it in a way of like creating pieces that belong in that museum. I mean, it's a huge honor to be there. It's 123 years of antiquity, 1,000-year-old artworks, and everyone on this panel, I mean, apart from the light, which highlighted our work, every one of those pieces, I've seen actually tour guides presenting some of our pieces when we were installing. Actually, it was the case for Omar's chairs. I was there with Nadine when a tour guide started talking about his chairs as part of like a prehistoric piece of history. Like, so this was amazing. And I think this was really like what all of us did, which was heritage was like a living dialogue for all of us. So I think just like everyone said, like I created a piece thinking in mind, like, okay, I'm here, it has to belong to this museum, it has to use a technique, has to use local materials, and really create that dialogue. The idea was more modern, using the emojis, but as an evolution to the hieroglyphs.
Yeah. And I think for that you reinterpreted something traditional, but kind of contextualized it in like where we are now in time, and so influencer the first.
Yeah, yeah,
Yes.
It was really that, like a continuation to like,
Yes.
this fictional pharaoh that instead of holding a staff of power was holding a phone, the new tool of power, and honoring the history of the hieroglyphs, which were one of the first languages created with symbols, not just letters or marks.
Yeah.
And today, emojis is the real international language. Beyond English, beyond Arabic, it's the one language we can all understand and talk to each other.
Yeah. What was like the catalyst of bringing this idea about like what?
I had that answer for a later question, but for the personal, but happy to go there now. Actually, the idea came because I work, just like Giulia, I work a lot with Egypt, and I'm Greek, Mediterranean, like so we have this affinity in terms of culture. And about a year ago, I was here on another project, and I was talking to somebody who could not speak English or any other language, and I couldn't find a way to communicate. And actually, I took out my phone and I started writing an emoji sentence, and he understood. And this is where I was like, oh, actually those modern hieroglyphs. So this was the very beginning of it, and then I just explored with, in a way, with like all the local materials in a way to honor what's been happening here.
Yeah. Awesome. That's a very cool story. Very true story also. I'd like to also ask you guys the same question as well. How do you like interpret the traditional techniques within the contemporary design? So for example, the chair that you created, Uraeus, am I saying it correctly?
Yes,
Uraeus. How did that, because the serpent was always a symbol like on top of the heads of the crowns, but what was the inspiration behind bringing this piece about?
About the Uraeus symbol?
Yes.
You know, the cobra it's a symbol of protection. And the chair is a chair, it's a fertility chair, which is a birth chair as well. It's originally the chair where women gave birth. But here in this context, it's more the idea of the fertility of ideas, fertility of thinking. So the cobra is basically protecting the fertility of ideas. So that's you know, like the really, if you want to get into like the symbolic. But the idea mostly is to try to, I'm not trying to bring in modern techniques or to compete with the incredible techniques of ancient Egypt, because I think it's impossible to match it. When I look at the precision of the work that I see in the museum, and you know, the instruments that they were using and the amount of time that they probably had, and just different minds. So the work, we tried, you know, I had a bench where I was doing these sort of hieroglyphics, drawing on them, and I think that it's just impossible to recreate the same precision. And the word precision, I think, is really the key word, because it's something that we're, I think, missing, you know, a lot today, precision. And so, so the idea is just it's more about the idea than the object itself, in my opinion. Sorry. Okay, yes. Sorry.
And Mohammed Kahil, I know the piece that we displayed this year, I think, was a piece that was developed with Mohammed Banawi, Finding Gold. And I think that was, last year we did this project where we had Kahil and some of our artists create pieces together, and they realized them in the most beautiful ways possible. And I think that was kind of bridging the traditional techniques with the contemporary. But I'm seeing also a lot of things within your new collections that you're creating things that are being pieced together. How do you come to these ideas, or in what way are you trying to?
Okay, I think it goes back to what you first discussed when we came up with global ideas. And I think, coming on to Omar's point about precision, precision for me is always good, but especially working in a craft that's so old and requires so much manpower, and they're all handcrafted items. So something I've learned over the years is that imperfection is also beauty. And it's something that took me forever to learn. I literally came from a background that had nothing to do with design or art. So I was a financier. In the States, I came back to a handmade rug factory. So that was like a big nightmare to start. Because for me, coming with like a finance brain, it was all about making numbers, growing sales, hiring revenue, and looking at the amount of human beings that we're working with, and using such an old craft was just made me like pause for a second and actually try and take everything in. And as I stayed longer with the weavers, my brain went from wanting to be like fully automated and increasing sales and all of this to actually really respecting what they're doing. So over time, I realized it's a lot more of it's a bigger story than just the company, right? There's families, there's people that's been weaving for generations and generations and generations. Like I have some weavers that actually were weaving, their grandparents used to work with us as well. So when I realized that, I stopped wanting to change the tradition of manufacturing, and I was looking at it more towards how can I shed the light on what we're doing. So we started really focusing on using traditional motifs, but modernizing the products themselves. For me, tradition doesn't need to stand still. Relax, you need to be looking forward. And the way we do that is by using traditional motifs we find in classic Persian rugs, for example, but modernizing them for today's market. And as we mentioned before, when you talked about global ideas, for someone coming back with no idea about Egyptian craftsmanship and traditional rugs, while I was part of this family, made me realize if I don't know anything about this, then there are so many people that are around my age and my generation that don't. So how can I reach that market? So we reach it by creating, modern ideas using traditional motifs and shedding the light. Because when you do that, you're able to scale your business because more people are focused on, when we do a collaboration, for example, with Alex Proba, and we use tools like social media to promote it. People will come onto our websites, will come onto our platforms and realize, okay, wow, not only is this a beautiful design, but it's using a
traditional
technique. So I was able to actually reach the scale that I wanted to, but just in another way, by learning about the craftsmanship this country has to offer.
And like telling stories through all these pieces that you're creating, for sure.
So you want me to answer the...
like how do you, because lighting is also quite, it's not lighting was always used, but it went from candlelight to technology now, but like...
I'll give you an example about a project that we're working on, a space that related to Egypt, the pyramids and the history, not yesterday's project, it's another one. And when we start to think about our lighting concept, it's inspired from the past. So it's inspired by what the ancient Egyptian temples were like, where it was sun streaming down. So we'll take that concept and use it in a modern way. Or how they used to cocoon light, or but basically it boils down to understanding the spatial context, the functionality, and balancing between the artistry and the precision. I know this is one of the future questions, but it's just about balancing those to remain authentic to and honor the the tradition of the space, the tradition of that, while modernizing the function, while seeing who's going to use this, how are they using it in a modern way that responds to human nature now, to responds to human needs now. So the balance is not just in but we also have one of the products that we love using most is by one of our manufacturers, and they took the idea of the old halogen bulb, okay, yes. And they mastered the technical part of it. Okay. They created a series of bases that fulfilled different contexts. They created a series of different powers, and then they got a bunch of international designers to each reimagine what the glass could look like. So even that concept is something that honors tradition in a way, but that modernizes it a lot more for today's needs.
For sure. I think I'd like to also ask you the same question, is like interpreting traditional techniques and how you create contemporary designs from that.
Well, I would like to look at the thing altogether as a puzzle. It's basically, it's not only design from, and how do you relate the heritage to the whole value chain, from the material itself. Yeah. We were lucky to be dealing with material as a gold, and how it is deep. There's a deep significance with a lot of civilizations and cultures, whether the Egyptian civilization, where they used to look at it as a sign for eternity, or even the Asian cultures. A lot of cultures, Asian cultures, they look at it as a sign of fortune and wealth. Yeah. So this is for starters. Yes. When you look, when you look at the value chain from gold, and then you start from the designing process. Again, we were lucky to build a strategy with the Nado's jewelry to be the focal point is really heritage. We have a specific art direction that we follow, which is biomorphism. We get inspired from nature. That's why
some of the lotus,
and the cardamom, and the lupini bean, termis. Yes. So those are maybe the three pieces. Egyptian, and this, and regarding the design and manufacturing part, it's very interrelated. You can't look at one without the other. And the thing is, manufacturing handmade stuff in jewelry, we still committed to the traditional techniques where the Egyptian goldsmith heritage is still there. And then when you look after the manufacturing, it is reflected in the distribution, where we're deeply, it's all part and parcel. Distribution, I mean the retail experience itself. Once you have to portray it to the public, you have to portray it in a very specific way, where it reflects your identity, where heritage comes at the core of it. And even the language of whether be it inside between employees.
And I think in that way also that's what makes your pieces unique, the story that you're telling from other.
Exactly. This is exactly, you just hit the nail on the head. All these pieces come together to create a brand that we found, and we like to look at it with an explorer personality that craves discovery and self-expression, and it is clearly expressed through the asymmetrical ways of how we shape gold. And even when you look at the product itself, it is, yes, gold, as how serious it is, but we modernized it with the hollow technique, where it should be light. It's comfortable for the user.
Yes. Thank you.
Thank you.
Giulia?
So, regarding this question,
I think maybe for your chair, the piece that you created, maybe if you can tell the audience a little bit about the story behind how you brought this piece together.
So there are two pieces. The obsession I have is to create a language that can speak about my experience as an architect and an artist. And the two pieces are dealing with this language and in the relationship of the question you were asking before. There is the question of creating an object and what is that? So the object is not just functional, it is, you can use it, but it has to have another meaning. So the research is both technical and by content. So on one side, if I think about how that worked, I am obsessed in matching the Italian design, which is an industrial design. The Italian design is famous in the world for the arts and craft, but in the modern world for the industrial design, which means make it like rational.
There's a certain way to make it.
And on the other side, mix it with the arts and craft, which I find here more. So the chair, it has a lot of meaning and it's a mix of many things. But it's an industrial product thought to be like, you can dismantle it, you can take the upholstery away. You don't see it, but it's easy to dismantle. But it used like arts and craft techniques. So the two sides, the structure is wood. It's the same technique that was used, still used, to do the door mosques. So it's wood cladded with brass. And then instead of having a religious motif, there's my drawing, because it's my language.
That's your identity.
And my language my drawing is my experience. So there are a lot of Egyptian, but it's like a dream. I don't want to point and say, this is that. It's like a dream. So it's a chair that wants to share a new way to regnate. As a woman, for sure, but also it's a grace way to regnate, because it's also inspired by the pharaoh's chairs. So there's a lot inside. It's a way of sitting. It's not just a chair. As a chair is maybe unuseful because it's big. It's very comfortable, but it is not something you will need to sit and eat. It's just a chair. And the tapestry on the other side, and the chair is completely made in Egypt. The tapestry on the other side is an object that is, I said Egypt, right?
Yes,
on the other side, on the other side, the other object is made in Italy completely, and it's a very. I made it with iMesh. Normally they do roofs and shades, facade. They did like the facade of the expo in Osaka, just to say one. And they have an artistic side, so they asked me to do an arazzo, which is something to hang, a tapestry. And in this case, this is an industrial product, so I went to the factory, and they do like, it's an industrial process. So we did a part industrially and a part manually. So still to mix the two sides of arts and craft and industrial design. And this is inspired by, it's meant to be an outdoor sculpture, because this material is very resilient, it's very high tech. So it's made of carbon and Zylon, like very precious. They do from the threads until the meshes. So it's a reminder again of an act of foundation, because luckily enough, I studied the ritual of founding the temples. So there's a goddess, and the pharaoh, and they lay the first thread to found the temple. And when I went to the factory, I didn't know how they actually produce this material, because they are the only one producing this material. It's a very strange way to produce it. And then the representation in the back is a goddess, or is an architecture, or is a female. My obsession is also to speak about architecture in a female way, so to have the proportion of it and to add the ornament, because ornaments is not just something that you add to it, but is something that is in the shape of it. And the thing that brings everything together is a bit this idea of the foundation of the new language, and the fact that the two pieces are called, in the exhibition, are called Under the Same Sky, in the sharing of these Italian-Egyptian sides that I have, and back and forth. So there is not just one way, but we share. Sorry, I speak too much.
No, not at all. I think it's like a culmination of your story also, bringing all the Mediterranean, between Italy and Egypt for your, it's like your identity kind of being put in within this chair, you know? Yeah. Rochelle, I think you earlier you were talking about being maybe contextually within the piece that you create, being contextually appropriate. How do you I don't know if that's the right way to say it, but as in creating, for example, the hieroglyphs and placing them on the piece. How do you define when to what message were you trying to say within those hieroglyphs, and what made you want to place that within this piece, within the womb to tomb?
So I think, more than a designer, I'm an artist.
Yes.
And usually this was a very different process for me, because I usually have a broad idea of what I'm going to do, but I allow whatever wants to come through on the spot.
Yes.
And so with this, looking at the idea of womb to tomb, it's also very much about the process that the art takes me through. Sometimes you feel like you're making a piece, but the piece is making you. And it's more about carving you and carving the process. So the idea of womb to tomb was the idea that the ancient Egyptians believed that when you enter the tomb, you're also reborn through the womb, and you go through the celestial body of Nut into the sky, and then you're reborn. And so the hieroglyphs looked at all the different goddesses. And as we're facing this ecological destruction on the earth, there's so much disaster, there's chaos. How are we going to be reborn?
Yeah.
And what does that look like when we center women, when we center the earth, when we center children? And so the hieroglyphs are all related to the goddesses that are standing and protecting this threshold of birth. And so I had to study the different goddesses, which feed back into my work and my process anyway. There's Isis and Nephesis, which represents life and death, and it's all the dualities that we have to enter as individuals within ourselves, and also within a global context. As everything is burning, I think our role as artists and designers is always to think about creating the future, or representing the present, but I think we have a responsibility to kind of contextualize the idea of dreams and bringing things into being over and over again. We're able to create from our minds and design, and that's such a privilege to be able to do that, because you create something out of nothing. And so, I feel like creation is a very feminine principle, and so all of those hieroglyphs kind of represent creation at its core.
Thank you, that's beautiful. Thank you. Athan, I think maybe this is a more futuristic question, but how do you see Influencer the first evolving, or do you feel like that the work that you're going to be creating, do you feel that this was particularly just for this context, or do you feel like this is kind of something that you want to build on?
Actually, the shape of using, I work a lot with Greek mythology, Egyptian mythology. So this was a combination of two types of my work. One was the story I shared before, where I realized that emoji is an international language. And the other is like rethinking ancient figures into a modern context, and what would they be doing today? Because technically, in the histories of the past, those gods were eternal. So what would it mean for them living today? Would they have a cell phone? Would they be doing their nails? Like, what is this evolution? So I have a lot of figures that are like ancient Greek gods doing those figures. And this was me adapting this into an Egyptian sensitivity, and really like this repetition of honoring the bas-relief that are like on the walls to show the quantity and to show the power. So this was the reason why I was repeating those figures. I mean, yeah, it is an ongoing, I mean, I work a lot in Egypt. I do a lot of traditional work here. I like to work with the craftsmanship here. I mean, just like Giulia coming here, and actually, I know Rochelle, like for us, it was like coming here and discovering all this amazing heritage that people like Mohammed are like honoring and keeping and offering it to us as new designers to like do new things with it. I mean, you did a tapestry. I've been working with Hayamiya, which is like this traditional embroidery technique through a wonderful architect, local architect, Tarek Shama. And we get to do wonderful projects. So my work always like lives a bit in a context. So the future is very unpredictable, it's very unknown. This is a combination of two of my works. This was really created for Egypt, for the museum. I wanted to use like Trieste marble, which is a local stone, where most of the stones most of the sculptures in the museum were done. This sculpture is meant to be living here in Egypt. How is it going to evolve? Probably it's going to be the figure, probably it's going to be like this idea, but the combination of the hieroglyphs and the emojis and influence of the first was really in this context of like the pharaohs.
Yes. Thank you.
Thank you.
I think we're running a bit late, so I'm going to ask one final question to all of you, and I think is where you see your practices, whether artists or designers, evolving into later, like into the future, and what takeaways do you have from the pieces that you created for to display at the exhibition?
Yeah. Okay, so but there was a very interesting question that I'm gonna answer because that was for me like the really focal point of all the questions that you asked about cross-cultural. You know, there was a question about you asked, yes, what are the challenges and the opportunities that arise from cross-cultural collaborations. Thank you. The thing is, I really want to answer this one because I think it really brings, it kind of answers also the one that you were asking. Yeah, and no, but you know, for me, because this is really le nerf de la guerre. It means the nerve of the war, like the important part, because I think that all of us, you know, we're speaking in English, and I wish I could speak fluently in Arabic and in Egyptian, but you know, I'm half Egyptian, half Lebanese, but I grew up in France. And I always say, you know, I've been living here for 3 years. I came here because of the material and the craft that I work with, and that's the question that people always ask me, like, how do you manage the different, what are the challenges? And I think that one of the great challenges, you were talking, Athan, about the language of emojis. And I think that we very often forget the very big challenge that language is. And I think that language is probably the biggest barrier, the biggest barrier that we have in the world, because even if you learn to speak a language, like I'm speaking English right now, but really I'm not really speaking English. British people speak English, American people speak English. I speak French fluently. I've learned English, and my Arabic also came after. So even if you learn language, there's always a soul that gets lost in translation. So I think that's a very big challenge that we can sort of try to repair through the creative work that we do.
I want to highlight one point which I'm very proud of, that the chair in particular, because many other chairs, I don't know about yours, but were done by companies like producers. So me, myself, it was 3 different artisans that were not connected to each other, so I coordinate the process. They were all Egyptian in like very hardcore place in Cairo, which I love. I love to go there. And I did it in 10 days. So everything is possible in Egypt. Everything is possible. Like if you know, and if you're open, and but it could have been also not really going well, because normally you have to do some trials, but it was like, okay, we have no time, that's one shot. So, related to your question, how do you see in your future? Since this was an act of foundation for the language, I hope to bring together all these languages in the same way like I'm doing, if it's a master plan, if it's architecture, if it's an object, if it's interior, to still going in these different scales and being able to communicate in this way.
So good. No, it was brilliant. I think for me, as a British Jamaican, growing up in South Africa, living in Mexico, in Oaxaca, in a village, I've always been able to try to navigate different spaces and traveling extensively where, yes, there is a language barrier, but like you said, there's energy. And I think art and design are universal languages that we're able to always connect over. And so for me, being able to steep myself into a culture with first respect and then understanding that I am meeting your tradition. I usually work with a lot of men fabricators as well, so there's also that challenge, which I think is incredible because it's like there's this push and pull between collaboration, between my ideas and what I want to bring into form. And yeah, I think, like you said, culture is like, that's where it's made, where there's so many cross-cultural conversations and then something new emerges from that. And I think it's always important as artists and designers to go into spaces and learn and then see what you produce, and that's a third space, you know? So working in Egypt for me was a very short time frame as well, and it was amazing to see what could be produced by the artisans here as well, giving them the concept and obviously going back and forth, like, can this work? The pushback, this is crazy. Then like having many discussions, sitting down, and I think it's also in that meeting point where you don't just push your idea. The artisans are equally the artists because they are making it and it's their hands that are carving it and it's their intention. So it's like I may have my idea, but then I have to come in with respect and see where we can meet halfway because I am coming into a cultural dialogue as well. And so as much as I'm a perfectionist and I want my way, I think there's this collaboration point. And that was the most beautiful thing with working here, also going out into like the work spots, getting to know the community, getting to know the other artisans in the area. And I love being in the workshop and understanding the different processes that I never understood before, which now I can go and take, and hopefully I've also given them new ways of thinking about things, because what they said they thought wasn't possible and some of the ideas, now they're like, actually, we don't just need to make replicas, we can think about our own concepts, and now you've given us that idea that we can kind of push the language further, which was incredible. So it was definitely a dialogue. Thank you.
I mean, I'm not sure what the question was, but I'm going to comment on everybody. I agree with everyone. Like, there is a real strong sense of pride in Egypt, especially by the craftsmen. I mean, the whole country right now, with everything happening between peace, the Grand Museum, the Egyptian Museum in Cairo, like everything is fantastic. But there is a real sense of pride with the craftsmen. And I had the same experience as most of you, where I showed up with a crazy idea that on paper, and I was also told by artisans in other countries, this is impossible, it doesn't work. And I came here face to face with energy, with love, with passion, and with their pride. They were like, you know what, we'll make it work, we'll find a way, we'll find a way. And they did it. And they did it again in a very short span of time. They went above and beyond. So I think the future potentially is the craftsmanship here, like more people coming here and like really working with those craftsmen that are like preserving those traditions. I mean, I work with stone, but I've seen other craftsmen that are like working with papyrus, and I'm not talking about the scrolls you can find at the airport with Nefertiti on it. Like, there's actually like, they are reworking all those traditions and incorporating them in architecture, in design, and there's really that sense of pride. And they're open to other cultures. There might be the language barrier, but with the energy, with the patience, with Rochelle coming there and like forcing them and being like, not forcing them, sorry, but being like, you know what, let's do it like that, break the mold, go there, put that there, being there, bringing different, like, also like what Giulia did, like going from one craftsman to the other, like bring them together, getting them to work together and like collaborate. I know that it seemed like there may have been barriers here, and I understand like for a lot of international designers coming to here would be like, oh my God, the chaos of traffic, getting to the right place, finding those places that don't have a phone number, don't have a clear address, don't have an Instagram or Facebook. But when you get there, it's a whole new world. And it's incredible what can be done here. And I really hope this gets preserved. And I mean, it's in your hands, especially the two of you who are right here. Like really make sure this keeps...
And you guys as well, because I'll tell you something, the experience that you have as a foreigner is very different than the experience you get as an Egyptian.
I know.
It's another debate, but
Because you don't understand most of the language.
yeah, exactly.
As a woman, I say that.
Two sides of the coin. So for the Egyptians, there's a lot that we complain about and say
Right.
only in Egypt, but from another point, there is a lot that happens only in Egypt. There's a lot that we make happen. There's a lot that we. So it's like everything else, the same. Yes, it is. So there's a lot of stuff that you guys are able to do that other people would have said. Like we turned off the museum lights yesterday. That's an only in Egypt situation.
Thank you guys so much. I think I want to open the floor to some questions because I'm sure some of the audience might have some questions for you. Would anyone like to ask a question? Okay. Okay. Thank you all so much for being here today, and I hope you enjoyed this conversation. Thank you.